Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to analyze a hand that I played against Jarretman in the PokerStars 200 Zoom pool. We were playing deep stacked and he put me in a really tough situation on the river, so I thought it would make for a great video to analyze. Let's take a look at the past footage of me playing these spots. Clubs, maybe even a 10, I don't know. I do a lot of checking in this spot regardless. And then the river is where I would have some kind of bluff where I'd want to remove combos of ace X. Um, just gonna check. I'm 4-betting large against Jarretman deep stacked. I'm using a polar range. Flop, I think we just do a lot of c-betting on. On a king high board and a 4-bet polar range, we have like aces with an ace of hearts. We have king king. We don't have as many flushes outside of ace 5 suited, ace 4 suited. Gonna check and then play. This is a tough spot. We're just gonna have to overfold if he goes large. If it goes check check, we might even have the same hand. He might have king queen suited. He might have king jack suited. I don't think I can block bet or value bet. So I guess we're just left with hoping to get to showdown. See what sizing he uses on the river, if he has value. I don't know if he can even bet ace king here. I guess he could if he has the ace of hearts. I mean, this line is usually never a bluff. I want to block the ace of hearts, of course. He shouldn't have too many flushes. I guess he has 5-6, 7-6. 8-9 is on the board. 9-10 is not available. Jack-10 is possible. This is tempting to call. I just don't think we need to go this deep in our range to call. So let's take a look at the ranges through the software GTO Wizard, which is the software that I use to study my game. And we can go through the hand using those ranges. So we're opening the hijack here against Jarretman, and Jarretman 3-bets the button. So if we take a look, this is going to be our hijack range and the 3-bet from the button. In this solution, there is no call range. It is the simple 200 big blind range, which is designed to have a 3-bet only range from the button. So whether or not Jarretman has a calling range on the button, that could alter the 3-betting range a little bit, but for the most part, this is going to be fairly accurate with the hand selection of Jarretman. So when I get back to us, we decide to four bets. We can either call or four bets. If we take a look at our hand that we had, ace king offsuit, it does call at a 27% frequency. I think I used an RNG in game to determine that I was going to, in fact, four bet. And I four bet to 32 big blinds, so fairly close to the 34 big blinds that Wizard suggests that I use. I do believe that because we're 200 big blinds deep, it uses a larger four bet than if we were to use the 100 big bet solutions. This could be for a few different reasons, but I do believe that in theory, the deeper we are, the larger that we can go with our four bet so that we can reduce the SPR post flop and reduce the advantage of the button in this scenario, as the button is going to have an inherent advantage in position in smaller pots. So when we make it larger like this in the four bet pot, the advantage is reduced for the button. And if we were to go even deeper than this, then it might be the case that we can't raise large enough to reduce the advantage for the button. So this is a specific stack depth, and where I think the 34 big blind sizing is being used is good. So we do that, and then button calls. And it is important to note that button's calling range is going to be uncapped in the sense that it's still going to have a lot of aces in it. It's still going to have ace king suited, small frequency of kings, queens at a full frequency. So this range isn't by any means weak for calling versus the four bet. And we're just going to keep that in mind as we get to the river in this hand. So the flop comes king 9-8, and we have two options. We're doing a lot of checking out of position, as in deep stack poker, again, the advantage is often in the position of the button. So we tend to want to check out of position at a high frequency because of that. Also, it really depends on how the hand construction interacts with the certain board texture. So as we saw, in button's range, they still have a lot of very strong hands, and we can compare the range versus the range using this range tool here. And we can see that the hijack is going to have the best hands at a 21% frequency. And then the button is going to have the best hands at an 18% frequency. So that's not too far off from each other. And you can see the equity advantage is going to be in the hijack as well as the EV advantage. And again, because we use this really large sizing and reducing the SPR, I imagine that's a big reason why we have the EV advantage. And also we are going to have a lot of the strong hands. So this is a really good tool to understand how the ranges interact on each board and why we can probably bet at a higher frequency or use a larger sizing depending on some of these tools here. Now, we decided to use the quarter pot sizing because I wasn't entirely sure if we did have a check range. And now looking at it, I do know that we have a check range. But in a 100 big blind pot, this hand plays a lot differently. So I assume that, again, because we're playing a 200 big blind pot, we have a higher check frequency. So villain does call, and the turn comes at 10 of clubs. Now, this is going to it's going to help some of the button's range in that villain's going to have hands like, if we look at their call range for the flop here, villain's going to have hands like Jack 10 suited, pocket 10s, 10-9 suited, King 10 suited. So these are hands that are all being helped by the 10 that now beat us. So it is a significant card to come on the turn. If the turn was something like an offsuit 2, then of course that wouldn't hit any of villain's range here. So it is not the best card for us. It's not the absolute worst card either. So I think we're going to have a mixed strategy on this 10 of clubs, which we are. And we can choose to check, bet a quarter pots, or even sometimes just go all in. And we can see that the option that I used, I used a check here. I used quarter pot on the flop. I used check, and ace king offsuit is going to be one of those hands that does do a lot of checking. And that's because at this point we just have a one pair hand without a significant blocker. We're not blocking any of the strong hands of villain. We don't have a lot of equity with ace king offsuit at this point. So we're looking to really just get to showdown here. And the solution wants to either check or bet really small, and it doesn't really do anything else unless we have the ace of hearts, in which case we would then start jamming at some frequency. So we check, and then button checks back, which definitely makes the hand interesting because we get to the river where the deuce of diamonds, the classic brick, comes off. And at this point, what are we supposed to do with ace king offsuit? Well, again, we can mix our strategy between check or bet small. In the video, I think I mentioned I wasn't sure if we could bet small, and I was fairly sure that we couldn't bet large, so that just left me with check. And I wanted to get to showdown, and that was kind of right because we do mix check with bet small, the 10% sizing, and bet small, the 35% sizing. But we are, in fact, never going all in or betting large because, like I said, this hand is kind of low down in our range on this particular run out. So once we check, then villain goes all in. And this is when it gets really tricky for us. So first, we're going to take a look at what villain is supposed to shove here, because that's going to give us an idea of what we're going to bluff catch. So villain can actually shove aces without a heart that they check back. They can shove ace queen of hearts, of course, the nut flush, ace jack of hearts, ace 10 without hearts. Ace 10 of spades and diamonds are actually in their shoving, and I assume that's going to be one of their bluffs. King 10 suited for value, 10-9 suited value, 9s, 8s, 8-7 suited, which seems to be a bluff. Pocket 7s, which is also a bluff, and pocket 4s, which is going to likely be a bluff. So the way that we can figure out if they're bluffing or not is see what category in the equity buckets these hands fall in, and we can filter for trash and weak hands. These are likely going to be our bluffs. And then when we filter for the best hands, these are going to likely be our value. So when we're bluff catching, we want to block value. So it's important, again, that we block the ace of hearts because that's included in ace jack and ace queen. And then it's going to be tough to block 10-9, 9-9, and 8-8. Because as you can see here in our check range, we don't really have too many strong hands that have an 8 in them outside of 8-7 suited, right? It's just not going to be a natural hand that we're going to have too often for 4-betting in a deep stack scenario. So blocking the ace of hearts is going to likely be our priority here by the river. And then when we look at the river, we can see that in fact, we are supposed to bluff catch with ace king off with the ace of hearts at a very high frequency. And then we're folding our combo by the river at some frequency as well. I imagine that it is a good call because it does block the ace of diamonds, which does in fact block the pocket aces combo that villain can still shove. So our hand ended up being a mix of call and fold. And the more obvious calls are going to be the ones that block the ace of hearts because those block the most combos of value for villain. And of course, we're going to have some slow played hands ourselves like ace jack of hearts. We're going to have some queen jack of hearts, some straights in queen jack of spades and diamonds. And we can even make some big calls with queens with the queen of hearts because that also is blocking some important hands like ace queen suited from villain in this scenario. So I'm happy with my fold, and I think if Jarretman is lacking any of the bluffs in this scenario, then it makes my fold even better. But assuming that Jarretman, is a good player, and we all know if we've watched his videos that he is very well versed in theory, so it's likely that he's going to find some of these bluffs. And I do think that I could have mixed call, but I am happy with the fold.